Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to go back to Zacian V. You see, ladies and gentlemen, I have shown you that Zacian V is probably the best card and the best deck in the format, and I stand by that. It's a phenomenal card that makes a phenomenal deck. But you see, I've been looking at all these lists coming out of Japan, and initially what would happen was that all of these good decks tended to be playing Arceus and Dialga and Palkia, which shouldn't surprise you. It's a phenomenal Pokemon, and it lets you do an extra 30 damage in all your attacks, it lets you take an extra prize of all of your attacks, and it lets you accelerate energy rather nicely. Okay. The thing is, the Zacian doesn't necessarily need to accelerate that much energy. You got Metal Saucer, which is just really Aqua Patch for Metal Pokemon, and then you've got the phenomenal ability that lets you draw free cards, and any Metal Energy in your hand get attached to Zacian, though do please remember that this ends your turn. And then free energy, 230, and you can't attack next turn, but that's fine, you'll attack with something else. But you see, ladies and gentlemen, the lovely Code 64X has gone and hooked us up with a couple of deck lists of Zacian decks which are very good and winning that aren't really doing that anymore, or at least aren't doing exactly that. Now, I've got 3 deck lists to show you here, and to be fair, one of them does still play Arceus and Dialga and Palkia. But that's alright. That's okay. The other 2 don't. But we are starting to see some trends here, so let's have a look at the new way to play Arceus and Dialga and Palkia. We'll have a quick look at the ADP list at the end, but we're going to be focused on the Metal list for now. First things first, they only play Metal Energy. It is a Metal Fest, it is a pure Metal Energy thing. And of course, the advantage of that is that you're generally playing 10 Metal Energy, so Zacian's ability is going to work far better, Metal Sorcerer is going to be far more reliable. But they still have a turn 1 GX attack on which they are relying, and that turn 1 GX attack is Lucario and Melmetal, which for a single energy says that for the rest of the game your Pokemon take 30 less from attacks. Now if you add a second energy on there, you also get to discard all the energy from the defending Pokemon, but for the time being we're just focused on taking 30 less damage and protecting ourselves. So instead of using ADP, I'm taking extra prizes and doing extra damage, we're using Lucario and Melmetal, I am taking less damage from attacks. But we're also doing extra damage here because all 3 lists, even the one playing ADP, are playing Galarian Berserker. The new Galarian Berserker, not even that new to be fair in Japan, the one from Sword and Shield that lets you do an extra 20 damage for all of your Metal Pokemon's attacks. Well, hang on a second. We've had that since Zacian came out. Why is it only just started to see play now? You know that Galarian Meowth I told you about the other day? You know how I said that Galarian Meowth would now allow you to play Galarian Berserker in completely basic, or in otherwise completely basic decks? I'm not right every time, but I was right about this. You see, it's got an ability that lets you search for Berserker. So now you can play your completely basic deck, you can play a deck where your only Pokemon search is Quick Ball, and as a side note here, both of the lists we're looking at, the only Pokemon search we're playing is Quick Ball, but it doesn't matter, because you search out your Galarian Meowth with Quick Ball, and then Meowth gets Berserker. Now, one of them's playing a 1-1 line, one of them's playing a 2-2 line, so they can do an extra 20 or an extra 40. But the point here is that now these new Zacian lists are playing Galarian Berserker, even though it's a stage 1, and it's all because of that new Galarian Meowth. Told you it was a big deal. Now, the other cool thing is that they're all playing Duskmane Necrozma, the one that has come out twice, and both times has come out as a promo. And really, I mean, there's a couple things you can do here, right? The first attack for 1 Metal Energy, 60 damage to an EX or GX. Now, free energy, 200 damage if your opponent has exactly 1 prize remaining is fine, But then if your opponent has exactly one prize remaining, it doesn't matter if you're attacking with a single or double prize Pokemon, and Zacian does do more damage. I like it for the first attack more. Obviously, we're playing Jirachi here. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, find a trainer card, put it in your hand, go to sleep, play a skateboard so that you can retreat it even though it's asleep. We get it. It's in so many decks. And then there's a bunch of little one-offs that we like playing. Like so many decks in Japan at the moment, there is one copy of the Absol from Team Up. It increases your opponent's retreat cost if they're a basic Pokemon. And Pokemon V and tag teams are all basic. They're ruling the format. This is a one-off in a lot of decks. And then we also see in both of the lists I'm focusing on here, one copy of the Mimikyu from Cosmic Eclipse. Now there were two. I'm talking about the one that blocks abilities on GXs with any damage counters on. You damage a GX, they no longer get any kind of ability. It's rather nice. And of course what you can do here is use Duskmane Necrozma to hit for 60 on the GX, then they lose their ability because of your Mimikyu. See how that worked out? And then one of the lists, though not the other, plays the Fione that forces your opponent to switch their active, and then you put it on the bottom of your deck. Good for making them switch their active. They get a choice, but they've still got to switch, and they might not have anything they want. Or you might just want to not attack into the active. And also, it stops you decking out. And then one copy of the new Oranguru that once during your turn lets you swap the top card of your deck for a card in your hand. It's nice for a little bit of consistency. It basically lets you draw a card and fix your top deck for next turn. But it's also really nice for Zacian's ability here. If you've got a Metal Energy in hand, you use the ability and guarantee that Zacian gets an energy. Remember, if you're going first here, you want to guarantee the turn 2 attack. Now, to be fair, if you're attaching from hand, you only need one Metal Saucer or one ability. But remember, Metal Saucer can be used at any time during the game, but the ability ends your turn. So the first Zacian V, you don't want Metal Saucer. You want to attach from hand, use the ability, and honestly, hopefully hit 2 energy. But then if not, attach from hand next turn. And then the second and third Zacian can be got going with Metal Saucer. And if you can use the ability going first to get one Zacian V up, and then use 2 Metal Saucer on each of 2 Zacian V, that'll give you 3 Zacian V, which is all you need, because 3 of them go down, you lose the game. And you don't need any other energy acceleration. Point is, don't go wasting Metal Saucer on your first Zacian V going first. The ability should work. If it doesn't, you're behind in energy attachments. Now, in terms of trainer cards here, I mean, we're still looking at a lot of the same stuff we saw before, except Metal Frying Pan becomes a bit more important. Now, don't get me wrong, we're playing Metal Frying Pan anyway, but now Metal Frying Pan combined with Lucario and Melmetal's ability means you're taking 60 less damage from attacks. And you've got no weakness. That's pretty gosh darned good. We also see Mallow and Lana here, and it's the same kind of thing. We are tanking here. We're no longer going for a more aggressive, I'm going to one-hit KO everything and take extra prizes build. We're now going for a full tank build. That doesn't mean you can't play Metal Frying Pan and Mallow and Lana in your old Zacian build with ADP. Because if we look at the one with ADP, I'll show you that in a bit. Actually, to be fair, it plays Metal Frying Pan, but it doesn't play Mallow and Lana. But it could. The point is, this is a full tank build. You don't have to go full tank, but you can, ladies and gentlemen. You absolutely can. In terms of supporter cards, we see Cynthia and Caitlyn. We see Professor Magnolia. We see Marnie. Get used to this. This is becoming fairly standard over in Japan. They're just really good supporters that people tend to play. Our stadium of choice here, it comes down to one of two. We've either got Shrine of Punishment, drops 1 damage counter on each EX and GX between turns, bearing in mind that is a phenomenal combo with Mimikyu, because then the GX and EX take damage, and then Mimikyu turns off their abilities, but it also helps you hit numbers. Or we go Chaos Vortex here, or Chaotic Swell, I think is actually translated as. And essentially, if your opponent plays a stadium, it gets immediately discarded and they don't get any benefit from it. In terms of gusting, we see a mix of Pokemon Catcher and Great Catcher, though we are leaning more towards Pokemon Catcher. Great Catcher guaranteed gusting on a GX or an EX if you discard 2 cards from your hand. Pokemon Catcher gusts anything, but you've got to flip a heads to do so. Yeah, this is seeing more and more play in Japan at the moment, and as we see less GXs in the format, or fewer GXs, this is only going to increase. I mean, both of the decks play multiple Pokemon Catcher, 2 or 4, while they both play 1 copy of Great Catcher. So worth bearing in mind there. And then obviously Metal Saucer becomes a phenomenal card for accelerating your energy. The last thing we really need to mention here is Switch. Switch becomes huge. Both of the lists are playing a lot of Switch, and the reason's very simple. Zacian V cannot attack 2 turns in a row. And you're playing Jirachi anyway. So you attack with Zacian, switch to Jirachi, use the ability, retreat with a skateboard, and so on and so forth. And then as previously mentioned, the only Pokemon search we're playing here is Quick Ball. All our Pokemon are basics except for Galarian Berserker, but Meowth has got our back. This deck has changed a lot in a very short space of time. We're now going for a tanky build with Galarian Berserker to do a bit more damage. No, that doesn't invalidate the old lists, but it does mean there is a new way to play. Here's the first list here. You've got a couple Mallow and Lana. You've got your 4 Switch, your 4 Metal Saucer. You've got your 3 Metal Frying Pan, etc. And this is the one that plays Oranguru and Fione. And then here is a second list which doesn't play those, still plays Absol, still plays Mimikyu, but this has a 2-2 Galarian Berserker line, i.e. they've cut a couple of one-off text to fatten up the Berserker line. And you can see here, other than that, it's a fairly similar list, though they do go for the full 4 Pokemon Catcher. Here is the ADP list I mentioned. We got a 2-1 line of Galarian Meowth, and it's still a very similar list, except we've taken out Lucario and Melmetal, and the healing, and popped in ADP and some water energy. It means that Zacian's ability is going to fire a bit less often, it means you're going to have a little bit less tankability, but it means you're hitting harder, and you're also taking extra prizes when you do. I'm going to leave it up to you guys as to which of these lists you prefer. For now, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to know what you think about this new way of playing Zacian. Are you buying this big tanky build, or would you prefer to just stick with ADP and go a bit more aggressive? Let me know in the comment section. Go nuts. Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WasiPlays, where you can find out about a whole bunch of games that don't have Pokemon in, but we love them anyway. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.